Now we need to add footings below all those foundation walls we created in the earlier exercises. In order to be able to do that, I need to first come in here, and I'm going to flip this to a 3D view so we can take a look at our building from the underneath side. Now we can draw those footings in underneath our foundation walls pretty easily inside of a floor plan view if we wished, but I always like to do it inside of this kind of 3D view so I can actually see the footings get created as I'm clicking to actually place them in the project. Now, underneath the Structure tab right here, we'll find that there's some foundation options for us. And part of those foundation options is this thing called wall foundation. This really is a footing that goes on the underneath side of our foundation walls. So I'm going to click on wall here, and it's important that I pick the right size footing. In this case, I'm going to use the 30 by 12 around the perimeter, and that 36 by 12 in another location. That other location is going to be underneath this bearing wall right here. Just by typical construction practices, we usually have that nice big footing underneath the bearing wall that's holding all that weight up there in the middle, and then a little bit smaller footings, or at least shape-wise, underneath our foundation walls. I'm going to go with this 30 by 12 and just start clicking on the underneath side of each of these walls. You can see every time that I click on the wall, it places a new footing in its place. So I need to make sure that I pick up each and every one of these. I'm going to spin it around just a little bit more, make sure that I got them all. It looks like there's a little wall right here that still needs to get picked up, so I can click on that, and you can see how these footings on the underneath side of these walls are starting to get cleaned up. Now I also need to add that other footing, that 36 by 12 on the underneath side of this bearing wall. So I'm just going to click right here, and you can see how that automatically gets added in. Now if I select on this word that says bottom here on my view cube, I can view this from the underneath side. The only thing that happened here is that you can see that this is just a little bit off, and how this corner right here and this just aren't lining up with one another quite the way that you'd like to see it. You'd like to see these all be the straight line going straight on back. And this relates back to the actual thicknesses of the walls and how REVIT tries to center this on the wall based on the thickness of the wall up above it. So this can be adjusted fairly easily. If I just select on one or multiple of these walls, I can then come into this category here, the eccentricity category, and change this to be a different dimension. In this case, I'm going to try 2 inches and see what it does. You can see when we use 2 inches, it just slides everything over, but the wall is still bearing all of its weight on top of that footing. I'm going to do the same thing here with this wall. I'm going to come up, change it to be 2 inches as well. And now you can see how that footing is all lined up on the right-hand side as well as on the left-hand side. And each of our structural walls now has a nice, strong, supporting footing underneath it to be able to bear the weight of the building up above. Whenever you're designing a house, you always have to remember to be able to model these footings in. It's very tempting to just draw these walls around the perimeter and not put the footings in, but it's not really an accurate representation of how the house needs to be built. And when you consider this only took us a couple of minutes to place these in, it's not really worth the effort of not placing them in when you can have an actual accurate model by using your foundation and wall tools to create the footings around the perimeter and interior of your buildings.